Harry here with the rant on Friday, October 17th. Well, it's time to do it or not for the stock markets from my point of view. You know, we've had this unbelievable 29 trillion fueled rebound and stock rally of all history. Has broken every cycle, every limit. And here we are coming into late 2025. And by the way, major tops largely come in odd years and major bottoms in even years, okay? And that's happened for most of history. 29 odd year, 32 even year for that bottom, and so on. So this would be the ideal time for stocks to top here. And of course, with pulling back on the balance sheet, they've really dropped back the balance sheet 2.7 trillion. This is just enough easing. Again, we're still running 2 trillion deficits almost, okay? So it's still stimulus net, but they pulled back enough that this would be the right time for stocks to start to weaken. And then since they have been stretched so far, so long against cycles, then the downturn momentum is going to be strong. And of course, the crash that ultimately ensues should be more on the 29 to 32 level than other crashes we've seen in history. So, and we do have a start here, okay? I keep telling people my leading indicator in this bubble of all bubbles, and this everything bubble as they call it, Bitcoin. And it's doing a good job so far. Bitcoin's been down just recently 17%, okay? So that's the good beginning of a first crash that should be 40, 50% or so by the past history of bubbles. Now, but so far, stocks have been slow to follow. So the QQQ and the Nasdaq and stocks are down more like 2% maybe for the S&P 500 and 4% for the Nasdaq. But they should follow quickly, and they have been lagging and should lag Bitcoin the leader. And then when I look back at say, the two things the two securities I monitor the most, yes, Bitcoin, because the leader, and the crypto, one of the new sectors that's been booming longer. And then of course we have the newest darling, NVIDIA being the leader in AI, or automated intelligence, okay? Now, NVIDIA is down 9%, so it's taken enough of a downturn here recently to say, it could have topped, okay? But folks, we really don't know 100% until we see something stronger happen again. And the perfect, and I look at the charts, this is what the perfect first crash would look at, with the typical 42% in the first 2 to 3 months from history, and looking at the stock charts and the key leading indices today, that the S&P in the first crash would be down about 46%, and the QQQ and Bitcoin similarly would be down more like 57%. Now that would be the ideal first crash. It would go to strong support levels, and then we could also know, yes, there's going to be a substantial bounce here, may retrace 40 to 50% before it really goes down in the next wave, or what I'd call the third wave down. But that's when we know, okay, the universe is starting to make sense again. That much of a crash is going to be hard to recover from. And people are going to finally say, oh, yeah, every time we have a big crash or downturn, then they just stimulate like crazy, and then we have a bigger downturn. And that's what it should look like, and that's what should happen, and will happen here ultimately, okay? So that's what we need to see. So that means this first crash, because it's been pushed back, could end up being down into Christmas and even New Year's in January. And of course, a bad first week of January, and more so a bad month of January, is also a sign that the next year, which would be 2026, will be down also. So that's my ideal scenario. We are finally peaking. We start to crash. Stocks start to follow Bitcoin down here very soon. And right in the Santa Claus season, all this stuff, even though we may get a little bounce there, we actually are in the midst of this first crash, and it is what first crashes are. Very strong, very fast. And the government is too slow to react. Of course, people say, Harry, won't they print more? Of course they will. But here's the point here. They ran out of ammunition before the war started here, okay? I mean, 29 trillion in stimulus since the 2008 recession. You spent that much money, 1.5 times of cumulative GDP for the whole period, per year on average, just to fight a recession. You're out of ammo. I mean, what are they going to do? Print 20 to 30 trillion next time in a short period of time? And aren't people going to go, well, wait, at some point you can't keep doing this. And there's no answer to this, because this is one thing. Most things in history I can find a precedent for. Big bubbles, okay, like the one that peaked in 1835, 36, and then again in 1873 and the long depression that followed that, in 1929 and the Great Depression, these cycles and demographic cycles every 39 years, technology cycles, innovation every 45 years, 90-year bubbles, these major bubbles. There's a lot of things predictable, but how this works out when, for the first time in history, governments, through fiscal mostly and monetary stimulus, created an entire and longer, greater bubble out of thin air on their own. No natural forces, okay, just reacting to the collapse of natural forces. So that's what's different this time. And again, they're going to fight it, but I don't see, if the markets melt down as fast as they have historically, and if anything faster. I mean, when I'm quoting you 46% down on the S&P and 57% down on the Nasdaq or QQQ, that would be more than the first crash. That'd be a little more than the first crash in 29 and in the 2000 bubble that burst, the first tech bubble. So again, you fight this thing, you inflate something more, it's only going to come back down harder. And so that's the best assumption until we see what actually happens in the real world, that's actually not so real anymore, because governments have decided they're smarter than the invisible hand. And for people who know Adam Smith, and I quote him a lot, he was the original guy who conceived and explained free market capitalism so the world could move into the most powerful system in history. And that just happened to happen at the same time in the late 1700s, when the US and Thomas and Jefferson and all these people were pioneering democracy, giving people a say in the system, okay? So the bottoms-up democracy and innovation came together, the perfect marriage. I call it when Harry met Sally, historically. So again, we've been on a tear ever since. And now, to me, what really makes me angry is that the most successful system in history, and now we got to second guess that and tell the economy when it can have a recession or not, and how big, and how inflation's got to be 2% all the time. Inflation is how we finance new revolutions, okay, and technology and stuff. Don't tell the economy what to do. You're going to have inflation when a new generation like the baby boom enters the workforce at great cost, and then pays off when they grow up and become the most productive workers in history and stuff. Same with technologies. Going to cost to innovate them, and then they're going to explode and make us all rich on a lag. This is not, you just tell the economy what to do. So my position. Governments have basically violated free market capitalism and indirectly democracy for the first time in history. And this is not going to work out well. And all you can do is protect yourself, especially now. Now that they've stretched this just another inning and out, it just pays to be safe. Either the safest, simplest is just be in cash until we do get this first crash or something that makes it more clear, which I do think is imminent now, or be in the treasury bonds, which will do modestly well if we start to slow down and then explode when we have a crisis. They will be your best friend in a crisis. And the truth is I'm hinting in the newsletter and responding to more questions, the absolute best strategy, if you want to play this, your short stocks for this first crash. Again, this first crash will probably happen in 2 to 4 months, down 40 to 50% as I've been saying, okay? That first crash is going to benefit stocks way more than treasury bonds, okay? You play that. Now, once that first crash has happened, you're gonna have a substantial bounce and government's gonna fight it harder. That's when you move to the treasury bonds who are less volatile, and when the finale comes and when things get really into a deep downturn, they will shine and be easier to sit in than stocks because stocks just get wildly volatile. So only the first crash is clear in stocks, it's just straight down. So short stocks or cash or treasury bonds, TLT, to start. And once we have that first crash, then I say really probably best to get in the treasury bonds and just sleep at night and let the greatest crash of our lifetimes happen if they finally let it happen. So again, I mean, that's the best I can tell you now. This is really stretched. Late the fourth quarter, you know, between September and December, particularly September, October, is the best time for stocks to top in a cycle like this, okay? So let's see what happens in the next month or so. Just be as safe as you can and or short if you're more aggressive here. And we should get some more clarity, I think, by year end. And I'll just have to keep you updated as usual.